Okay, so last time we've discussed about the five ways of arguments of St. Thomas Aquinas to prove the existence of God. We have argument from motion, argument from causality, argument from contingency, argument from degrees, and uh, argument from an intelligent designer, or what we call the teleological argument. Also, we discussed about uh, in last time we discussed about the natural law of Saint Thomas Aquinas. Okay. Now, we will discuss about the concept of justice. Okay. So we have different concept of justice. Okay, and the concept of justice is very difficult to comprehend because it is a subjective matter. When you say subjective matter, I might agree uh, definition of uh, with your definition of justice, and you might not agree with my definition of justice. Or in short, we have different meanings of what justice is. Okay, that's why it is subjective. For example, uh, activists would say that justice is something to do with the right amount of salary or right amount of wages to be received by laborers and workers. That can be in the form of economic dimension of justice. Lawyers and policemen, police officers would say that justice has something to do with the right punishment to be given to the criminals, and rewards should be given to the uh, good doers. Okay. Also, we have the concept of social justice. That means that the marginalized sector of our society um, would cry for help to the government, for support, for the social services, or for the attainment of basic needs. Okay? So we also have the concept of justice, which is related to fairness. And we will explore the meaning of justice uh, as fairness with the philosophy of John Rawls. Okay? But before that, okay, these are some of the reflection questions that we need to address, okay? Or we need to think about. Is justice about equality, or is it about fairness, getting what we deserve, or getting what we need? Uh, is justice about equality when we say that uh, the the right amount of resources should be given to those hard workers, and to those who are uh, not hard workers should be given their deserved resources. Okay? Meaning, ibigay sa kanila kung anong nararapat sa kanila. Ganun ba ang konsepto ng justice? Or we should base justice on the needs, our individual needs? Since we have different needs, therefore, we have different uh, category or measurement on how we can attain justice. So those are some questions that really matter in terms of tackling about the meaning of justice. Before, during the ancient times, particularly or specifically the ancient Greeks, uh, when they mean uh, a just society, okay, uh, we mean that each member of the society must fulfill their roles, meaning each one of us has our roles to do. And if we fail to fulfill or we fail to do our task upon our role, therefore there will be disorderliness and there's disorganization in the society that disrupts the social order of the society, and that can be a way to say that there is an unjust society. So that is the concept of justice or a just society during the ancient times, particularly the Greeks. We also have the concept of justice as utility. So, according to this belief, a fair or a just society tries to increase the overall quality of life for its citizens. As long as the people are receiving their basic rights like clothing, food, and even their necessities and even their shelter, they can feel that they have this just society through the help of the government that will provide necessary needs for them. That is their concept of a just society. And as long, again, may I reiterate that as long as they receive their basic needs, particularly physiological needs, then we can say that justice as utility as or as usefulness has been served its purpose to the people. So that is what we mean by justice as utility. We also have the concept of justice in political libertarian or for political dimensions. So according to them, a just society allows its citizens to maximally free. So as long as an individual enjoys his rights or he can do whatever he wants to do in the society and no one tries to hinder him in exercising that right, okay, he can say that he is maximally free and he can say that he is in a just society. So as we notice, there are several uh, perspectives with regards to the meaning of justice. But of course, I mentioned at first that we have several meanings of justice, and that is a subjective concept based on our own understanding about it. Now, we need to understand the concept of John Rawls as fairness, justice as fairness. Okay, so many consider the American political philosopher John Rawls lived from 1921 to 2002, the most important political philosopher of the 20th century. He rejected utilitarianism and offers a number of arguments against such a theory. He argues that utilitarian thinking cannot absolutely exclude systems such as slavery or racial segregation, as there is nothing in the moral theory to dismiss them from consideration. That is, slavery, for example, is to the overall benefit of society, in that the well-being of the slave owners overshadows overshadows the suffering of the slaves, then utilitarianism would be required to accept slavery. Okay? What do we mean by that? In utilitarianists, the focus is about the usefulness of everything, including slaves. As an hypothetical example, if slaves are useful to the slave owners, therefore the concept of slavery will be accepted based from utilitarianism. And that is uh, the concept that rejected or argued by John Rawls. John Rawls maintains that slavery is wrong under all situations, regardless of any utility calculations, for it does not respect the fundamental rights and liberties of all persons. Slavery is wrong not because it is unproductive or inefficient, but because it is unjust, for it does not consider individual rights inviolable. Okay? Now, in understanding John Rawls' principles, he had this combination of Kantian and some, not absolutely rejecting utilitarianism, but some of the idea of the concept of utilitarianist in a way, in describing the method for the moral evaluation of social and political institutions. Also, when we say uh, Rawls justice as fairness, he mean that the least advantaged citizens of the society must be prioritized to say that there is fairness. Okay? That is the concept of John Rawls. The priority must be the least advantaged members or citizens of the society. That is, taxation issues can resolve the problems of poverty through proper allocation of budget. That can be one. Or um, the distribution of the wealth of the elites to the people can be an answer to the alarming poverty rate. That is under the concept of uh, John Rawls' fairness. He had these two principles. First is the liberty principle. The second one is the difference principle. Okay? So the first one, the liberty principle, concerns with the political institutions. According to him, each person has the same and indefeasible claim to a fully adequate scheme of equal basic liberties, which scheme is compatible with the same scheme of liberties for all. So this liberty principle tries to argue our example a while ago about slavery. That is, regardless of the productiveness of the slaves and regardless of the efficiency of the slaves, still slavery is unacceptable because it violates the basic human rights of any individual of liberty. Okay? Now, um, the concept means that everybody has the same basic liberties which can never be taken away. And this first principle is very Kantian in that it provides for basic and universal respect for individuals as a minimum standard for all just institutions. For example, uh, if an if a certain group, okay, if for example the LGBT people, uh, they feel that uh, they have this freedom of speech and freedom of expression to be enjoyed, and also the concept of due process of law. Therefore, those rights must be enjoyed not only by the LGBT people, but all peoples and including all minorities. Okay? So again, in the liberty principle, all of us have this liberty to do what we want, but uh, considering that these liberties must be limited on what is written primarily in our constitution, particularly our basic rights. Okay? So these rights are can be seen in this: our right to vote, or of course our eligibility to be elected as public official, our freedom of speech and freedom of to organize an assembly or to organize a group, okay? Our liberty of conscience and our freedom of thought, freedom for our identity, and our freedom to acquire a property, okay? And our freedom from against arbitrary arrest and seizure as these are understood under the law, or can you say that freedom against illegal arrest? So those are basic rights that must be enjoyed by everybody regardless of their status. Okay. The second principle has something to do with the difference principle. Here, uh, it has something to do with the social justice, and it has something to do with the fair equality of opportunity for all. Okay. So according to um, John Rawls, okay, according to John Rawls, uh, social inequality and economic inequality are given, but there must be an observation of these conditions. First, the concept of real world wherein positions in offices and even positions in government agencies, higher positions, have this power and give them advantage over the least advantaged people. Okay? So meaning those individuals working in the government who have this uh, higher position or higher ranking give them utmost power to decide on things or to decide on matters, maybe for their own benefit or for their own advantage. And they have the capacity to choose, to play with their options, and of course, to disregard to the least advantaged members of the society. Okay? So, what are the basic notions of the second principle? Okay? Holding positions of authority in offices of command open is clear enough. And according to him, there must be uh, no tests based on wealth or property, no exclusions based on gender, race, or even hereditary positions, meaning the government officials must be uh, with their position based on their qualifications, not on the padrino system or not on the nepotistic idea. Okay. Again, it should benefit especially the least advantaged people. Again, if I may recall, the concept of John Rawls justice has something to do with giving fair treatment and advantage to the least or to the marginalized sector of the society. Of course, as a whole, there are criticisms with regards to the uh, concept of John Rawls fairness. Okay, because again, the concept of John Rawls has something to do with prioritizing marginalized sector. Some of the criticism is that it is unjust because you work hard for you to have to acquire these resources. You work hard for to be rich, or you work hard because you wanted or you aspired to have a better life, and then these resources that you've acquired, since you gain enough, will be redistributed to other people, especially to the less fortunate. And that is, of course, unjust because individuals uh, who never work for their own will just hope for the grace, or will just hope for services to be given to them by the government. So, parang tinotolerate yung katamaran nila. Okay? Now, being more or less advantaged position is relevant to fairness. Yes, remember that we are living, in reality, we are living in an equal society. It is for us to accept, it is for us to rise above these inequalities, to strive hard so that we can acquire more and we get what we deserve. So those are some of the criticism of the John Rawls principles. Okay, so I hope we are clear about the concept of John Rawls justice as fairness. Okay. However, of course, we will talk about justice as fairness. In your next PowerPoint presentation, you can see the distributive justice. Okay.